turned on here. So this is part 4 of God's plan for preparing a future biblical home and finding a spouse. Preparing parents and children for marriage. Obviously, the parents are married already, so it doesn't mean preparing the parents for future marriage. Anyway, but this is we've gone through several series and we're building up to this, and so I'm trying to not just rush through things, but to put as many verses as I can in the amount of time that we have to help put these things into perspective so that we can understand it. And this is very important. It's a principle that God has a lot to say about, and it's good for us as parents to remember so that we can teach our children, and it's good for some of the younger kids who are here today, even who are able to see this. So anyway, what we're going to look at today is the outward versus the inward. Okay, so last week we looked at the 3 parts of us as people. We have body, soul, and the regenerated person, saved person, has a regenerated spirit. So the foundation of really relationships for saved people is God as the foundation. So if you weren't able to listen to last week's, I encourage that because of the things we're going through, they build up. The next is that of friendship. Now, obviously, the spirit, backing up here, this can be both men and men or women and women. Friendships are both for men and men, women and women, men and women. Okay, but this is important when it comes to a marriage because back here you have God as the foundation. Then next you have the friendship as another additional foundation. Okay, so those 2 are the foundations. But if we were to have simply an attraction of that which is the flesh, this kind of attraction is the most shallow. It's the most sensual. Okay, if a person bypasses the spirit, which is God's regenerated spirit, bypasses the friendship of the soul, and the outward attraction is the least favorable, it's the shortest lived and the most destructive. Okay, so we're going to see that here today. It's looking at that which is on the outside rather than on the inside. So what is love? Love is putting the other first at the expense of self. It is investing in the other. God as a foundation, and then friendship. Going back to our diagram, the regenerated spirit, God as a foundation, and then next friendship is putting the other first. Those 2 are putting the other first and are based on the other. Okay, if you remember, maybe everyone's familiar with this, maybe not, but if you're not, there's again, we're not emphasizing having to know Greek. It's just that these words are easy to remember. Agape love is unconditional love. Phileo is friendship, or I shouldn't say friendship, but phileo is more of affection. Okay, so agape love is unconditional, phileo is affection. So back to these, okay, those on the 2 on the right, 2 sections on the right there. Okay, these are based upon the other first, God and the other, and this is based upon the other. This is true friendship. This is based upon attraction, which is the self. Okay, so remember that. So, but an attraction simply based upon the outward is because it is pleasing to the senses, to the heart, how it makes us feel. It is that which is the outward. In other words, the self is first, which is affection or phileo. Okay, and it's for affection for self. It's supposed to be affection for somebody else and putting the other first, not us first. This is the least of all. This is not a quality relationship, and without a friendship will most likely fail. So what we're talking about is an attraction on simply the outward. Now we're going to put this in perspective. We're not saying that anything, if you find somebody attractive on the outside, that something's wrong with you, you're evil, or anything like that. We're not being silly, okay? The Bible does address that. In fact, the Bible we'll see mentions when people are good looking, okay? But it also puts it in perspective. It says, what's it worth, okay? So anyway, going on, the outward versus the inward. Well, as we look through this, we'll see the whole thing put in perspective. What we're talking about this for is what will be the basis for a person's marriage. Younger kids, you'll be married someday and have children. What will you teach them? Younger or single people, what is it that you are looking for? You know, I remember during that time, you're trying to put things into perspective. You have the feelings, you have these different desires, you want that which is godly, and you're trying to put it all in perspective. So this is something I think that will be helpful for everybody. So here's a rhetorical question that 2 Corinthians 10, verse 7 says, do ye look on things after the outward appearance? And it's written to the Corinthians, which was kind of a carnal church, and he's saying, you guys, you're doing that. Okay, it's not a good thing to do. Let's look at an example. If you turn to Genesis chapter 29, okay, let's look at an example. Now, if a person is good looking, it's not their fault. There's nothing wrong with that. And here's where I flatter the crowd and say, we understand we have that problem, don't we all, right? Okay, anyway, so, but we have here in Genesis an example where Jacob, it's, okay, this all goes into, okay, polygamy is not a biblical centered thing to do, okay, but it happens here. We won't go into all the details of the story, but he was finagled by his father-in-law to have a different wife so that he could stay there and be his servant, basically his slave for a few more years. And in a sense, Jacob was reaping what he had sown. He had done a lot of that himself and manipulation. Now he was manipulated. But in Genesis chapter 29, in verse 16, it says, and Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. And Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. Now, we're not going into all the details. I don't know. I wasn't there. Maybe it truly was love. But the point we're simply trying to make is Rachel was more favored because she was prettier than Leah. Was that the only reason that Jacob was attracted to her? I don't know. Okay, but it certainly helped. But do good looks equal good character? We're going to find, sadly, no. Genesis chapter 30 and verse 1, and when Rachel saw that this is after all of the lies and deceit, he's married to both of them, and when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said unto Jacob, give me children or else I die, which is incredibly unreasonable, and Jacob naturally reacts. Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, am I in God's stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? So obviously, he's popping out kids, or actually his wife is other places. He's not the problem. So, okay, and she said, behold my maid Bilhah. Ah, the baby-making contest begins. She shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. And she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to wife. Okay, afterwards, this is years later, Jacob's leaving. He's running away from Laban, his father-in-law, and Laban overtook Jacob. Now, Jacob had pitched his tent in the mount, and Laban, with his brethren, pitched in the mount of Gilead. So we're looking at, I should have mentioned this, what we're doing is we're looking at Rachel's character here. Okay, so backing up a little bit, we see that Rachel envied her sister. Jacob was angry at her because of her unreasonable demands, and she says, hey, here's Bilhah, this surrogate wife. I'll have children through her. Okay, which leads to why he had so many. Verse 26, and Laban said to Jacob, what hast thou done, that thou hast stolen away unawares to me, and carried away my daughters as captives taken with the sword? Verse 30, and now, though thou wouldest needs be gone, because thou so longest after thy father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my gods? Okay. Verse 32, with whomsoever thou findest thy gods, Jacob says, let him not live. Before our brethren discern thou what is thine with me, and take it to thee. For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. See, Rachel's character so far is not looking very good. We go on to verse 33. And Laban went into Jacob's tent, into Leah's tent, and into the 2 maidservants' tents, but he found them not. Then went he out of Leah's tent and entered into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the images and put them in the camel's furniture and sat upon them. And Laban searched all the tent, but found them not. And she said to her father, let it not displease my lord that I cannot rise up before thee, for the custom of women is upon me. You know what that means. Okay. And he searched but found not the images. Was it really her time? Or was she lying? Don't know. But I guess I've always taken it as, yeah, she's just lying. Now, on the other hand, it doesn't say either way. She could have been, but how convenient. Anyway, so Rachel was pretty, but we look at, and I'm not saying it's a contest between her and her sister, because it doesn't have to be one or the other. Could have been neither. Could have been, in this case, it had to be both. Not had to be, it just turned out that way. She was, though, the first to envy, the first to cause family strife, the first to start a baby-making contest. She stole from her own dad, stole his images, which are abominations to God, hid them under her person, and most likely lied to her own dad. Apparently her husband did not even know of it either. So she's secretly holding on to false gods, bringing them into the home underneath her husband's nose. The gods, false gods, are a source of a curse in the home. The Bible says these are an abomination to the third and fourth generation. So are we talking, good looks do not equal good character. And we know that, but do you see also how potentially, and I don't know, I'm not second guessing, I'm not saying who should have been the wife, I don't know, I'm just simply saying he's attracted to her by her looks, but do you see what did that get him? It did not get him good character, it did not get any of these things. So you see the outside is a very, very poor source of looking for a spouse. Okay, at the choosing of the first king, the outside is not a very good source for choosing really anything. So we're going to see at the choosing of the very first king for Israel. 1 Samuel 10 and verse 20, if you wanted to turn there. 1 Samuel chapter 10. Okay, there was something about Saul that was very attractive as a leader to the people of Israel. And it's just in human nature. There's something about he's tall, he's big, probably handsome, that somehow there's a security there. There's kind of a funny meme or whatever about this just super tall guy walking through a supermarket, and all the people just stop and they look at him, and there's just, there's a natural attraction or natural security around somebody like that. But that person could be really nice, or they could be one of the worst people in the world. So you see the outside is not a gauge of that. And we're going to see something here. So at the choosing of the first king, verse 20, and when Samuel had caused all the tribes of Israel to come near, the tribe of Benjamin was taken. When he had caused the tribe of Benjamin to come near by their families, the family of Matri was taken, and Saul the son of Kish was taken. And when they sought him, he could not be found. So they're going through all of Israel, go down to the tribe, then they go to the family, and then they go to the sub-family, verse 22. Therefore they inquired of the Lord further, if the man should yet come thither. And the Lord answered, behold, he hath hid himself among the stuff. So what the stuff is they're there. It's the supplies. It's the stuff that they brought there so that they could be there for a few days during this festival and taking in, coronating the king and stuff like that. So he's hiding amongst this stuff. So at first, Saul was a very humble person. He's shy. He didn't want the attention. Okay, it starts off that way. But that's not our main point. Notice verse 23, and they ran and fetched him thence. Now notice this underlined portion. When he stood among the people, he was higher than any of the people from his shoulders and upward. That means that you look at the taller of the Israelites, and I don't know. We don't know how tall people were back then. You hear that they generally may have been a little bit shorter. How do they know? But whatever. Okay, but regardless, proportionately, he was way taller than anybody. Verse 24, and Samuel said to all the people, I'm sorry, I didn't finish the rest, any of the people from his shoulders and upward. Samuel said to all the people, see ye him whom the Lord hath chosen, that there is none like him among all the people. Now, I'm not judging Samuel like, come on, man, you're a prophet, you should know better. We all can be subject to our feelings. And we have feelings in our, Samuel, he had a natural liking for Saul. He groomed him. He saw him when he was a young man and saw his humility. And he coronated him as the king. He anointed him. He was there for him. He was his mentor. He invested in him. And so, there's this natural, but here's the thing. Does height or looks have any bearing upon character or leadership ability? Samuel was taken in by it. Now, I'm not saying the opposite, like, oh, he's tall, so what? No, it just doesn't matter. The point is, let's go back to the underlined portion. When he stood among the people, he was higher than any of the people from his shoulders and upward. And then Samuel says in the underlined portion, there is none like him among all the people. Actually, let's go back to verse 24. I want you to put yourself in the perspective here. Samuel said to all the people, he's speaking to everybody, see ye how this is your first king and how encouraging this is. But he's making reference to Saul's outward beauty or his height, that which is appealing. See ye him whom the Lord hath chosen, that there is none like him among all the people. And all the people shouted and said, God save the king. Okay, so I'm trying to find pictures to put this in perspective. Here's somebody that at his shoulder is taller than the man next to him. Depending on where the shoulder begins, if you, I don't know, there's a few inches there, okay? And so I'm not trying to get too picky here, but if you were to go with her height towards the lowest part of his shoulder, you're looking at proportionally how much, potentially, how much taller Saul was than everybody else. Okay, so it says all the people. So that means that that's probably the average higher height of the majority of men in Israel, and many people are even shorter than that. He was head and shoulders above everybody. So I'm not saying he's a giant in the perspective or aspect of like Goliath. No. But in comparison to the rest of the people, you see Saul walking amongst them and be like, whoa, this guy's a giant. He's really big. Okay, so this guy on the throne, I mean, this naturally appeals to your nationality. Whoa, you see our king? Okay, he can beat your king, kind of the, two 5-year-olds, my dad beats your dad kind of thing. But anyway, this is, wow, he's quite a bit taller. Now this is kind of a neither here nor there kind of thing. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that Saul was given to them because of his character. Just some questions. They're just food for thought. Could it be said that Israel was getting the king they wanted, looks good on the outside, but lacks the godly foundational substance to lead? Israel kind of did that at times. They looked on the outside, but they didn't have the godly foundation of the substance to follow God. So again, you maybe hear somebody go, yeah, that's exactly why God did it. We don't know. It doesn't say that. So we've got to try to get away from what does God actually say that. But it's kind of interesting, just inquiry, good questions. Was he a reflection of them or the country? Did they get what they asked for? Anyway, but when God went looking for a king, you know the story. Later, he goes out and finds David. And at 1 Samuel 16:6, and it came to pass when they were come that he looked, this is Samuel, who was about to anoint one of Jesse's sons. It says, when they were come, that he looked on Eliab and said, like, wow, okay, surely the Lord's anointed is before him. This has got to be the guy. Why? Well, we see why, because God says it in verse 7. The Lord said unto Samuel, look not on his countenance or on the height of his stature. See, he's doing it again. Because I have refused him. Because this time, for the Lord seeth, notice, the Lord seeth not as man seeth. For man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. So this is very, very good to see this as a Bible study so that we can understand what our hearts do, is they're more inclined to the outward and they can influence us. Go, wow, I really like this guy. Is it based upon this person's character? Or is it based simply on the outside and the frivolousness of the heart and how easily the heart can be swayed? So here's a good question, an observation. When God came to earth as a man, what did God emphasize? Isaiah 53:2, for he shall grow up before him as a tender plant and as a root out of a dry ground. He hath no form nor comeliness. Form is physical. He was not, Jesus didn't come as some 6'5", just broad shoulders, narrow hip. Who cares? He hath no form nor comeliness. He doesn't say he was ugly. It just says he wasn't good looking. When we shall see him, there's no beauty that we should desire him. He wasn't taller than everybody. He wasn't better looking than everybody at the very least or most. He just was average. He blended in with everybody else. But our human nature wants ourselves even to stand out above others, to be known for something. Preachers want to be known for something. They want to be known for the subject they teach or the being the most popular. Or we that's our natural desire, but it's natural, not supernatural. what did God emphasize? Certainly didn't emphasize beauty or outward beauty. So I'm borrowing this next few frames. Several months ago, we had a kind of a men's get-together and men's meeting, and we talked about godly men. And this is a very small portion of that, but here is some pictures of computer-generated, good-looking people, okay? So we simply make the point that outward beauty is literally only skin deep. It really is, okay? So this could be anybody, because I don't know. I mean, the guy on the left, the woman on the right, I mean, could be the most beautiful or not the most beautiful. It doesn't matter. Under the skin, they actually all look pretty much the same. We do. So this is that really, really thin layer of skin. And the proportions of the nose, eyes, eyebrows, cheekbones, all of that stuff, all blends together in a natural way to appeal to our senses and our heart. And that's okay to a degree. It just depends on what we do with that. Now, God made people that way. So it's not his fault. It's not the person's fault if they happen to be attractive. But the perspective of it is this, the really, really tiny thin layer, which is a very small portion over the person's surface of their skin. And also, if you notice, looks fade away. Youth fades away. Look at this. He's a young man. He's 17 years old. It's taken ages ago. And as we slowly fade into plus 85 years, this is going to be all of us. Okay, do looks fade away? Hey, I don't know. I'm not 102 years old, and I'm not a 102-year-old woman. If a woman was 102 years old, she might go, wow, that guy's a knockout. Okay, but beauty fades. We age. Okay, so before and after. It doesn't matter. God looks at nothing like this. And, you know, yeah, I get it. Sometimes it's a little more pleasant to wake up to something in the morning that isn't, unattractive. Okay, but the point is what builds the marriage, what builds friendships. So here we have on the left, exterior, strength, size, brains or intelligence, beauty, money, fame, materialism. Favor is based upon performance or what you have. It's on the exterior. Self is number one. Whereas interior is character, honesty, sincerity, lying, not lying, or manipulating, humility, hard work, not just to get things, but hard work for others. The interior is supposed to, it can be selfish too, but it's supposed to be that for others and to please God. So God does mention in Scripture at times people that were handsome or beautiful, such as Sarah. We're not going to look at all of them. But God does put it into perspective in Proverbs. Notice he says, Proverbs 31:30, favor is deceitful. Okay, let's just stop right there. Because you see, if on the outside a person goes, oh, wow, that person's attractive, suddenly this person could be evil, and person doesn't care because their heart is swayed. So favor is deceitful. So there's nothing wrong with being favorable. It's just that you don't know what you're getting, and you can't let that which is favorable mislead you. You have to have your wits about you and go, oh, okay. So there's nothing wrong with somebody go, oh, okay, yeah, this person's attractive. Okay, so what? Not like so what, but doesn't mean that it's going to have to sway you. So favor is deceitful. Beauty is vain. Okay, vain means empty. But a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. By the way, praised on this earth as well as in heaven. See, that outward does absolutely nothing for the future in heaven. And as we're going to look at later on, there's some verses in Corinthians about where a person is, what is it that you do? Is it for God? Is it based upon spiritual things as a foundation? Or is it based on self? What we get rewarded for is not based on self. Okay, here's another one in 1 Peter chapter 3, which you're familiar with already. Who is adorning, let it not be the outward adorning of plaiting of hair and of wearing of gold or of putting on of apparel, okay, but let it be the hidden man of the heart. Now, we do see in places where a woman at her wedding, she's decked out and she has her hair up. It's not saying you can't do those things, the proper perspective. The point is the contrast. It's not about the outward adorning. But verse 4, let it be the hidden man of the heart, and that which is not incorruptible. Okay, it doesn't get old. It doesn't fade away. Even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. Okay, and here this puts it really into perspective. Proverbs 11:22, as a jewel of gold in a swine's snout, so is a fair woman which is without discretion. And this goes as well as for a man. So here we have, as an illustration, the foundation, the fear of the Lord. That's the inward, that's the heart. This is the foundation which builds for a loving, giving, a person who has a servant's heart, kind, gentle, good, others first. These are just some characteristics I've put together here. And above that we'd see is that's a foundation for good character. Above that, way at the top, looks. Okay, this is form or comeliness, which God did not come in that way. Now the opposite would be, okay, so we have as a foundation, someone has good looks, or the tall, or the bigger build, or they're rich, or they drive a nice car, or the outward, okay. That tends to, if this is the foundation, what builds upon that is that which is selfish and self-centered, volatile. I'm putting together some of the things about Saul and Rachel. Selfish, self-centered, volatile, hair-trigger temper, covetous, proud, paranoid, a thief. These make for unhealthy, strife-filled relationships. Okay, so I'll just mention this, just something came to my mind about this. There was this commercial years ago, okay, and this guy is driving out, he's got a nice, really nice convertible, and he pulls up to a stoplight, and he looks over, and there's an attractive young lady, and she goes, wow. Well, he thinks she's talking about him and his car. She's looking past him at some satellite deal. It's a commercial, okay? They don't have satellites anymore. Anyway, so she's looking at some kind of a great deal that they're selling and advertising for. He thinks she's looking at him and his car, and he reaches over and he opens up the car door so she can get in. She goes, huh? And meanwhile, at that time, another car drives by and just tears off his door. Anyway, it's just kind of funny. So do good looks, that which is tall, big build, rich, drives a nice car. These are things that are actually attractive to people. Actually, there's another thing. Somebody was walking by. He tries to talk to a girl. She doesn't give him the time of day. And then it's an experiment. It was on YouTube. And then he pulls the keys out of his car. It's just a really, really nice, very expensive car. Next to the street, he pushes the button, opens up the door, and she's like, oh, that's your car? Everything changes. Suddenly she's attracted to him. Okay, very, very poor gauge of a person's relationship. Now, I don't want to overdo the illustrations, but I had this in there, and I'm like, well, should I take it out? Anyway, it's in there. So here's just a cake, okay, obviously what it is. The substance or the foundation of this cake, roughly 98%, let's say, is that portion which is on the inside, okay? That's the structure of the cake. It holds it up. The icing is not the structure. It's not the substance. It does not hold up the cake. It's a very, very small amount and on a very, very thin layer, just like the outward appearance of the people that we saw earlier. The outside is a very, very thin layer. It is not the substance. Who you are is what is on the inside, and who you do it for God, is what is most important, and that is what you will be rewarded for. Nothing on the outside. Now, again, putting it in perspective, let's look at somebody who, Rebecca, just happened to have both qualities. Okay, so let's, again, putting it in perspective and be fair with this. Genesis 24, and it came to pass, before he had done speaking, that behold, Rebekah came out, and this was the servant of Abraham, who was looking for a wife for Isaac, who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, with her pitcher upon her shoulder. And the damsel was very fair to look upon. See, God does mention that. A virgin, neither had any man known her. And she went down to the well and filled her pitcher and came up. And the servant ran to meet her and said, let me, I pray thee, drink a little water of thy pitcher. Now this was his prayer prior. How am I going to find God? Please help me. Let me ask somebody to get drink from them. And the one that says, I'll help you with give drink to your camels, she's the one. Now, we're not familiar with camels. We've seen them at zoos, I suppose, but we don't have them every day. But they can drink a lot of water. Okay. So I'm not saying you're bad character if you say yes to this or no, whatever. Would you go, hey man, let me give all your camels, and there might have been 10 of them, I don't know, a bunch of them. Just going to be there for a while. You might go, maybe that's not the smart thing to do. I got things to do today. Here, I'll leave you the bottle. You can feed your camels, and that's still doing the guy a favor, right? Anyway, she doesn't. Verse 17, the servant ran to meet her and said, let me, I pray thee, drink a little water of thy pitcher. And she said, drink, my lord. And she hasted. So she's not like, okay, she's not taking her time. She wants to help him and help him now. She hasted and let down her pitcher upon her hand and gave. See, these are key words the Bible gives us. Gave him drink. And when she had done giving him drink, she said, I will draw water for thy camels also until they have done drinking. You see, this was one of the criteria that he wanted, something that's difficult. But she said this, and so what is her point? She had a servant's heart. These are the qualities to find for a wife or a husband. So here we're just looking at her character. She was a very, very nice person. She was willing to help. She's likable, kind, and friendly. More about that in a little bit. She had a servant's heart. She was generous. It was like, well, oh, great, these camels. Here, I'll pour some in the trough, and I gotta go. I got stuff to do. Like what? Anyway, so she knows how to speak to people. She's respectful to her elders, and she's not intimidated. She's just being nice. She's not afraid to do difficult things. She's not afraid of work. She's not lazy. Oh, and in addition to those things, yeah, she's pretty, the Bible says. Okay, so back to that icing on the cake. She's pretty, but doesn't hold up the cake. So, but even if she was not pretty, she can't help that. But she can help, the thing of this, even if she was not pretty, she can still do the other things, right? So, pretty or not, she can still be nice, willing to help, likable, kind, and friendly, have a servant's heart, be generous, know how to speak to people, because it's about others. See, when you speak to people, you're putting them in perspective and you're being kind to them. It's about them, not yourself. I don't feel like speaking to anybody. Well, who is it about, you or them? Well, it should be about them. Well, then be nice to them and talk to them. Take the time. Somebody who is sitting there like themselves, it's not healthy if it's too much. Respectful to her elders, she can do all of those things. She can choose those things. The looks she can't. None of us can choose our looks. I mean, modifiable to a degree, yes, but we can all choose to do those other things. So, on the part about being friendly, just a little side note here. Okay, Proverbs 18:24, a man that hath friends must show himself friendly. Now, this particular passage, what does it mean? Well, I mean, it's obvious enough, but sometimes this is shown as well. If you're going to have, if you want friends, you better be friendly. Well, technically, a man that hath friends, you see, he already has them. It's not doing this to get them, but that's kind of the reciprocal. But anyway, a man that hath friends, he already has friends, must show himself friendly. So a man that has friends must be a friend to his friends. Or a man that has friends must practice being a friend to them. How do you lose friends? Don't be a friend. Now it takes them as to be a really good friend to keep coming back to you and stick around with you. But anyway, a man that has friends must practice his friendship. But also, along with that, if a man does want friends, he needs to be a friend and be friendly. See, there's a few, I've gotten to meet quite a few people out here. There's somebody I'm thinking of, is just a super, super nice guy. He's friends with everybody, or he's friendly to them. He's not gullible. He's got his opinion, but he's not obnoxious. He just is kind to many, many people. And when I have coffee with him, he's waving to people. He's always being friendly and has nice, pleasant eyes towards them, kindness. So if a man wants friends, or a young person, so we're talking this about our younger people. These are things, young people here or anyone who's listening, you can listen to the same messages that we do as adults, and it's not just for adults, it's for kids too. So you can choose to be kind and friendly like Rachel was. She was a young woman, I'm assuming, maybe in her late teens, early 20s. But anyway, So if a man does want friends, he does need to be friendly. And the ones that you have to continue that friendship, be kind to them, be friendly. So in the time we have left here, just a few more passages. Matthew 23, Jesus says, "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye are like unto whited sepulchres, which indeed appear," notice, beautiful outward, "but are within full of dead men's bones and of all uncleanness." You see, there is so much the Bible has to say about the outward versus the inward. Matthew 7, "Beware of false prophets." You see, in order to find a spouse, what parents do is they try to gauge what this daughter or this young man or young woman will be like for their child, okay, depending on son or daughter, okay? So they're fruit inspectors. Well, we all should be fruit inspectors to a degree, and this one is dealing with that which is religious. "Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing," that is, the outward. See, the religious world looks on the outward appearance, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. How do you find out? How do you know them? Well, you shall know them by their fruits. Some guy says, I love people. I love all the people. I want to use your money for good things, and he buys, 3 or 4 multi-million-dollar jets because he has to fly to his meetings very quickly. Yeah, you'll know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them. But you know what? There's a lot of people who don't look at the outward. They do look at the fruit because they look at common sense. And if a person, going back to the previous one, is not friendly, well, they're not going to want to be friends with them. A lot of times people are going to look, I don't want to have to work so hard. I don't want to be the one working so hard to be this person's friend. I'm kind of tired of it. How about you put out some friendship now, okay? Or how about good character, things like this. This is the fruit that someone should bear. And they're going back to the other thing. The outward appearance doesn't matter because they win people over by their goodness. Galatians 3, "O foolish Galatians, who hath bewitched you? You were enamored with something that ye should not obey the truth." Truth is substance, the things that mattered, before whose eyes Jesus Christ hath been evidently set forth, crucified among you. A picture of Israel in Ezekiel chapter 16 says, "But thou didst trust in thine own beauty." After that, it talks about how very unfaithful she was. So you see, the outward is not a bearing on that which is inward. So we are not to trust in a person's beauty. We're not to be bewitched by the outside. You must be an inward spiritual character fruit inspector. Companies do background checks on people. They fill out applications. They do drug tests. Employers do a background check, legal matters, all that stuff. The military does a background check, talks to parents, teachers, local law enforcement, everybody to see if this candidate is going to be good for them. Okay, so should not parents do an evaluation of the worthiness of a future son-in-law for their daughter? In fact, young people who are going to be wanting to be married, they should be doing that also. A future daughter-in-law for their son, a character background check, not talking perfection, but realistic goodness, wanting the best from God. Should not each young person just be friends with everyone? A Christian doesn't pick and choose to be nice or friendly only to those they feel like being friendly to. We are to be nice and friendly to everybody, okay? So should not each young person just be friends with everybody? And then as they find, as they're getting to be friends with everybody, as they mature, God may pick out or show it to them, this person here could be the one for you. And the parents are involved, God's involved, and the young people are involved, all three together. So this is going back to what we were talking about last week and the week before. And this is putting this into perspective, that it's not the outside. A person needs to have much more maturity than that. The outside could be a trap to something that is a mistake of a lifetime. Okay, so we're going to stop here. We're going to look at more next week. I want to just examine this, take our time through this, and we're going to look at some examples of potential examples of marriages that have failed because people looked at the outside as the basis for their marriage. Okay, let's go ahead and close with a word of prayer. We thank you, Lord, just for all you've done for us. Thank you for so much of the perspective that you put in the Scriptures and so much detail. Help us, Lord, to be good fruit inspectors in kind ways, not to be spies, of course, but as we are led to by you so that we may be doing future favors to our children and future spouses. Help us, Lord, and lead us in these things that we may be guided by you. In Jesus' name we